So I was scrolling through Facebook as one does during a deadly pandemic where you can't leave your house because you're on quarantine because you had sore throat 10 days before. And you don't want to go get a test because that's higher risk than just waiting it out in your house if you have no symptoms. So yeah, I was scrolling through Facebook and I came upon a post. It's just a meme and it has 2000 and it shows the Simpsons girl. Sorry, I didn't watch the Simpsons. I'm sure I'm going to get some funny comments about that, but I've seen the Simpsons, I just didn't watch it that much. But it's the Simpsons younger girl, Bart's sister. Says in 2000 she's sitting there in I guess that might be the Oval Office, I'm not sure, but I'm guessing that they predicted that there'd be a woman president, and she's wearing a purple coat with looks like some beads. And right next to that is a picture of Kamala Harris, swearing in on Inauguration Day. She's wearing a similar outfit. And then below that, there's, the Quran, the Mahabharata, or the I didn't read that one, but the Bhagavad Gita, the Holy Bible. Looks like two versions of that. They're sitting there, and it says predictions made by the Bible, Quran, and Vedas are as believable as the predictions made by the Simpsons. Just kind of like a atheist anecdote thing. It's not that great, but it's a good conversation starter. That's all I'll have to say. A lot of people that believe in a god or gods, theists, they seem to think that people are attacking them or whatever. And we're going to see that because I'm moving on to, a discussion over this. So I kind of scrolled down, a little bit curious. Have like a guy, Larry Molek, says, I'm sure the Simpsons are more accurate. And then purple is the bipartisan color. And then we have this guy. Not true. Quran and most of the holy books, which have been sent by God, talked about the origin of human beings' creation. They've been created from dust and clay, and science confirmed this fact. The expanding of the universe, the talking ant with which atheists still today are denying it, the fingerprints. While atheists were thinking that there are no heaven nor hell, scientists confirmed that there are billions of planets in heaven. Wherever you go, you will find signs, prophecies you denied, if it have anything to do with religions. But Simpsons, you finally admitted it because it didn't require you to accept reality. An interesting fellow. I'm intrigued. So I decided to respond back. Your response is essentially the puddle argument. The puddle, feeling at home in its hole, says, this hole had to be made for me to exist in it. What other explanation could there be? This is a fallacy, of course, since there is not evidence that the hole was made for the puddle. Obviously, the puddle formed within the hole, and the two things exist together with no divine or otherwise influence. Unless there was evidence of an external entity making that hole and pouring in the fluid that is the puddle, you cannot make the assertion that the hole was made for the puddle, because that would be dishonest and wrong. That's essentially lying. I have read the Quran, the Mahabharata, and two versions of the Bible, as well as numerous papers and books on the epistemology of the texts. They're ancient texts clearly written by man with no evidence of divine influence. Given the features of your God, and I still stand by this statement, described in the Quran, that God could not logically exist, and it's highly improbable that any other God or gods exist for that matter. Long story short, not impressed, bring better evidence. So he responds back. You are able to read, of course, but that doesn't mean you have the ability of understanding what you're reading. Should we count your opinion? Or the opinion of Dr. Maurice? I don't know how to say, I think it's Busai. I haven't heard of this guy until I saw this. But his quote says, it's a meme here, as a medical doctor and particularly attracted to physiology and natural sciences, I must confess that in 1972, when I read the Quran in the original text for the first time, the data concerning man were those which impressed me the most. And in view of knowledge in days of Prophet Muhammad, and then PBUH, when I was originally saw this, I kind of just looked over it, but it finally clicked for me a little bit earlier. That's peace be upon him. So to say again, back talking about Dr. Maurice here, I'm sure he was a great, at what he did. But anyway, he says, as in view of knowledge in the days of Prophet Muhammad, it is inconceivable that many of the statements in the Quran, which are connected with science, could have the work of any man. So, okay. Essentially, all that's saying is a medical doctor is impressed at something. Congratulations. What does that prove? So he says, oh yeah, he had already said, should we count my opinion or the opinion of this doctor? And then he says, the good thing about the Quran, it's the truth. Science confirmed that, whether you believe it or not. And then he sent this video. So I'm going to go over this video after I go through these posts. We'll come back to that because I want to go to that video, and even I want to really just kind of debunk some of these just poor arguments that somebody that doesn't normally or hasn't heard them, sometimes it can take them aback, because it's what apologists do. It's what people who want to recruit people to a certain ideology do. They come up with these little anecdotes that sound compelling to somebody that's not really up on philosophy. But once you start saying these things to people who understand at least the basics of philosophy, it sounds completely absurd, right on its face. You don't even really need to do much research in many cases. And I'm just saying that I don't really feel like I needed to do a lot of research in order to, know that this guy is very, very indoctrinated into his religion. So, really, the only thing that I'm doing here is appeasing myself. Maybe that's a little selfish and kind of weird, but I don't think that I'm going to change this guy's mind. But I do know that other people are reading these comments. And I do know that public debate is a good thing. And not only is it a good thing, I think that it's patriotic. We should be having these conversations. And I do appreciate that this person was able to go out and give their opinion in a public forum. But at the same time, that's kind of the crux of a public forum, is that other different opinions might pop up. And this is just all I'm doing. So continuing on here. So then I replied back and I said, just because some inherent truths exist in a text doesn't mean that the text has divine influence. By that logic, you must really be into horoscopes. You know how horoscopes speak in generalizations so that they're perceived as prophecy? This is pretty much what you're alluding to here. I mean, the Bible, Mahabharata, the Quran, and Harry Potter, and articles in Fox News all have inherent truths within their text. Does that mean that every prediction of all of those texts is divine influence? The answer is no. I'm an electrical engineer. I'm not impressed that a medical doctor was impressed by the Quran in the 1970s, long before the internet exposed these fallacies to the masses for mass consumption. Good for him, I guess. Cool story. This still does not prove anything. You must have empirical evidence for your assertion for existence, otherwise the null hypothesis, or it does not exist, is the default. Then I replied, I did watch your video, because he posted that video as I was making that reply. So I said, I did watch your video. All the points made in the video, and I'll go over this later, are essentially the same argument as I made above. I do appreciate you making me aware of this video, though. I'm considering doing a debunk video on it, which I'm going to be doing, obviously. It all depends on the timing of a few other projects. I get that those explanations seem compelling to you, but you have to remember that personal experience and anecdotal evidence aren't overly compelling ways to convince someone else of your same beliefs. If you were to imagine a completely fair court of law in which Allah is put on trial for existing, would there be enough evidence to prove him guilty of existing? If the trial is completely fair, there would have to be very compelling evidence to prove guilt. My stance is that he is innocent until proven guilty, and he is not guilty yet. I acknowledge that those points in the video contribute heavily to your beliefs, but they aren't compelling to just about anyone else that isn't already a Muslim. And it apparently found that to be funny, because, you know. So then he replied, this is where it starts getting strange, because up to this point, like, I know, obviously, that he believes in Islam. He knows, or probably has a good idea now, that I don't believe in anything and I'm an atheist. So he replies, you just proved that if you really read the Quran, you didn't understand it, in quotes. In the Quran, God sent one messenger, at least to every nation. If there are signs in the Bible, I'm omitting, or I'm helping him out here. I think he's saying that's because there's still words of God and teaching in the Bible and in other books that we probably never heard of. Empirical evidence for what? That you've been created by chance and your nose is above your mouth? Why? Isn't that an organized order so that you can smell food before eating it? Why you have an ID within you? Why did God mention the disbeliever's fingerprint 1400 years ago when the disbeliever doubt resurrection? Even if you find the Quran is the truth, you will find hard to accept it. This is why you are on the denying mode. And I'm not trying to misrepresent what he's saying there. It's just, it seems like English isn't his first language, and that's fine. I just am having a little bit of trouble figuring out 100% what he said. So I'm trying to comb through it here. So then he says, stupidity is a condition, ignorance is a choice. So ad hominem attack. We're already on to, there's other fallacies that are in there, but this one is just a blatant fallacy. Like, he obviously knows that that's a fallacy. And this is what a lot of apologists do, especially online. And I've even had a few cases where apologists will do it, but this guy's definitely proselytizing. So anyhow, what they do is they try their best because they are trained. They go to these little seminars, and when they are in these seminars, they give all of the arguments, or they give all of the common arguments that they hear. So like, We'll see later on. He gets a kind of a little wild because I brought up, one hadith. And he has probably been shown that a number of times, whether it's in his religious community or if it's within internet communities who also do this. These people are very devout about their faith. So this is not, controversial in any way. I mean, Mormons are actually taught to go door to door, and they're taught how to do this type of thing. So I'm just saying, like, Muslims do the same thing. Many denominations of Christianity do the same thing. If you get into a conversation with these people and they are getting a little to the point of making you uncomfortable, know that that's intentional, okay? In most cases, I would almost say it's intentional because they know that if you aren't feeling comfortable, you aren't thinking as clearly, and then it's easy to get into your mind. They prey upon your fears in order to bring you in. This is a common technique in negotiation. This is not controversial. And I don't think that it's controversial that I tell people either that religious apologists regularly manipulate people using these tactics. So continuing on. Thought that was hilarious. It is pretty funny. And I said, you're welcome to believe in your own echo chamber all you want, but it's still not convincing. Ad hominem attacks and half-truths don't cut it. I'll be sure to send you a link to my rebuttal video. And then he shows the Bernie Mittens meme and says, I suggest you first to try to be fair and just and not to be afraid of the consequences of accepting a thing that you hate or you probably dislike, and that is none of your interests. And then we thought that was also funny, apparently. So then I responded, you're the one making claims here. All I've done is easily debunk them. I have yet to personally attack you, yet you lecture me about hate. Let me be clear. I do not hate you. I do not hate Muslims. I do not hate that which does not exist. I don't accept the Quran for the exact same reasons you don't accept the Bible or the Mahabharata as the true word. You're obviously fronting so your buddy Roddy Hovey can continue to post GIFs of people laughing instead of having the courage to engage in public debate. That's fine, though. Like I said, you are a puddle who talks about the hole you inhabit as though Allah put it there. All the while, nobody made the hole. Nobody made you. And you're going around telling everyone that's the case because Muhammad, a pedophile, known con man, and warlord, said the place of lies and deceit is the hairline, and said something vague about fingers and how they are formed over 1,500 years ago. Really? I've expended enough effort for now, and I took about an hour break. In that time, he replied, while I was watching a movie, can you tell me what was the greatest thing that Moses and Jesus were preaching? And I'll actually, the greatest thing that they were preaching? I'm not ever saying that there's not good things within holy texts. I think that not killing is probably a good idea. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. The golden rule that was actually around long before Jesus came around, but within those texts exists, the words. There's a lot of great things that they were quote unquote teaching, but I don't really believe that those peoples, existed. I don't believe that they were real people. I think that Muhammad was likely a real person. Because I think that there's enough evidence that he did exist. But I don't really think that Jesus existed, as a real, actual person, for the same reasons that he criticizes me for quote-unquote believing in one hadith, which I'm just going to say, when it comes to one hadith, his criticism is a very common criticism, but where does he get his information from? Exactly the people who are, it's in their best interest to try to feed you the bullshit in order to explain away these absurdities in their text. You know, the Christians have the same exact thing. The Hindus have the exact same thing. The Muslims have the exact same thing. This is not... I could literally have this same conversation with a Christian regarding the dates of when the Gospels came out. And I could have the same conversation with a Hindu about the dates that certain texts within the Mahabharata originated and whether they're valid. So listen here, dude. It's tired, you know, it's a tired tactic. I have seen it. You're not showing me anything that I have not seen before, and this is mainly the reason that I'm making this. So he continues on. Pedophile, are you talking about Biden or Trump or Bill Clinton? When did the word pedophile exist? Was it there when most states considered it was legal? And then he says, did you edit your comment because you can't answer my simple question? So, and I actually looked to try to find what he was talking about because I didn't even remember editing a comment, but apparently the very first comment I edited, and all I said was I changed one word in it. It was is. So like originally I had a mistype, and I said, this is a fallacy, of course, since there is evidence that the hole was made for the puddle. And it was a mistype, so I put in is not. That's all that meant. Not really that big of a deal. People make mistypes all the time. And I'm trying to give the benefit of the doubt on his end. So, I mean, even though there's not perfect punctuation in there, I'm not trying to ramrod him for, you know, not being completely perfect like Mavis Beacon teaches typing or some shit. But, so, he says, pedophile, are you talking about Biden or Trump or Bill Clinton? When did the word pedophile exist? Was it when most states considered it was legal? Did you edit your comment because you can't answer my simple question? Plan B. Start to insult the prophet, forgetting that the best of you, even today, are accused of what was legal even in the past years. I will school you. Think you lost it already. Okay. So then he goes over and continues on and says, before I school you, let me answer the question that force you to start insulting. Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, peace be upon them all, were preaching that the God is one, even in the Today Bible, although they finally admitted that 1 John 5:7 is a fabrication. Okay. Imagine that you were recruiting for the past years and finally find out the truth in the Quran. It's too much for you. This is why I asked you to be fair, for I know that you are recruiting to murder extremists and Muslims and not the extremists Republicans. You're as blind as most extremists. If you want to accuse others, I'm guessing is what he's wanting to say there, you should remember Muslims were in the so-called the New World, but their problem is that they didn't do what you did to the natives, and I'm glad they didn't do what you did. Now let's go back to your pedophile ancestors. Yeah, these guys are... You should take... If you haven't ever gone and read some of the Muslim publications from like of course translated, but if you haven't read some of the publications from Afghanistan and Egypt, Iraq, those Muslim countries, you should do it sometime. Trust me, it's not all sunshine and rainbows like everybody wants to talk about. So I'm just saying, yeah, my ancestors, which I don't give a flying fuck about ancestry, but besides that point, my ancestors did do some really messed up stuff. But guess what? Women in my country don't have to wear face coverings. Women in my country don't get their clitorises cut off for something that doesn't even exist in the Quran in the first place, but is directly related to the religious practice. I'm just saying, don't worry about the speck in my eye until you take the whole orchard out of yours there, brother. And there's today evidence, the Muslim world isn't a great place. Just saying. I mean, you might not think that. You're a male. Ooh. Life's really freaking great for you, bud. Just think about going to a Muslim country as a male. And people do that. Americans even. They'll go over and they'll pack their crap up. And they're just like, I'm getting the hell out of here. And they go to these Muslim countries. And they will dead serious have sex slaves. And it's okay. It's okay. It's legal. They marry these women in the cultural practices. And there's nothing that the women can do about it. I'm just saying, this is today. It exists. There are numerous cases of this. There's so much evidence, it's ridiculous. So don't be coming over to me and talking about, oh, your ancestors, blase, 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 blah. Your current day culture brought on by a religion is way worse than what American ancestors have ever done, including slavery, which is wrong. Continuing on, he decides, I guess, to continue hammering this really dumb point home. So, that's another thing. Just because my ancestors did something doesn't mean I approve of that. What? Maybe that's what you do, and that's fine. If you want to stick to what your ancestors did, go by all means, do it. But I don't do things just because my ancestors did them, necessarily. Sometimes there's just inherent things that I would have to do that my ancestors also did. But yeah, I don't look at the practices of my ancient ancestors and start trying to plan out or make a life plan based upon that. I go my own way based on the information I take in and the decisions I make based upon that information. So he says, even if you change the topic trying to insult, to run away from answering my question, I will school you. I'm still waiting to be schooled, by the way. I have already seen this information. But anyway, A Guide to American Sex Laws by Richard A. Posner and Catherine B. Sibbaugh, page 44. He's probably got a folder of these memes all stored up. But anyhow, so it says, Richard A. Posner is a chief judge of the U.S. Court of Appeals, 7th Circuit, Chicago. Catherine B. Sibbaugh is associate professor at Boston University School of Law. They say that before the 1900s, age of consent was 10 years old. The law governing the age of consent has changed dramatically in the United States during this century. Most states codified a statutory age of consent during the 19th century, and the usual age was 10 years. Cool story, bro. That's still wrong. And here's another thing. It was always wrong. Always. So that means when cavemen went over and raped cave women, or cave girls, or Neanderthals raped Neanderthal women or girls, that was also still wrong. Just because they didn't see it as wrong does not mean that it is not inherently wrong. Continuing on, he says, opposing hate speech by Professor of Sociology Anthony Joseph Paul Cortese, page 85. Professor of Sociology Anthony Joseph Paul Cortese says that a 50-year-old man being with a girl under 10, being intimate in parentheses, under United States law was legal until the mid-1960s. I mean, I think it's like 12 years old in a couple states today. I'm pretty sure that's the case. But anyhow, in 1962, the American Law Institute recommended that the legal age of consent to sex, that is, the age below which sex is defined as statutory rape, be dropped in every state to age 10. And there's a citation there. In fact, until the mid-1960s, the legal age of consent in Delaware was 7. Okay, I already knew this information. So a 50-year-old man could legally have sexual intercourse with a 7-year-old boy or girl. Do you know what else? You know what else? A 51-year-old man could have sex with a 7-year-old boy or girl. And do you know what else? It's motherfucking wrong that he would do that. Still, I don't give a crap what the laws are. Laws do not equal a moral compass. Just because it's a law does not mean it's it's moral. So this line of reasoning is already falling apart. I better move out of the way. I'm going to get hit by some falling debris here. So then he says, I wouldn't argue, granted, all of this is being said while I'm watching a movie with my son, but he's really going at it. He says, I wouldn't argue with you concerning the hadiths and the disagreement of the real age of the Prophet's wife and why a sect hate Aisha. And he says, Ra, I don't know what that acronym means, because the dispute over who should rule after the Prophet, and wouldn't argue with you about the lies about Aisha because of Ali's fake fathers, who accused her, and that hadith is 200 years after the death of the Prophet, and even there is a hadith that suggests her age was 14, even to around 17 in some studies. The thing I believe you don't have the ability to study. It's over your level. Just try to find an excuse to keep fooling yourself. Now tell me, are you sure your ancestors weren't pedophiles? I'm not talking about who were running for the presidential candidates. I'm talking about the 19th century. Are you sure your grandfather wasn't a pedophile? And then he has another quote here, teenage sex and pregnancy, modern myths, unsexy realities. Okay? Mike A. Males is an American sociologist who writes from a pro-youth rights perspective. Males, wow, that's an interesting last name. Like, that's his last name, Males, is a professor at the University of California, he writes. These early laws specified that a girl consenting to sex had to be at least 10 to 12 years old in most states, with a few specifying ages as old as 14 or 16. In Delaware, the age of consent was 7. Based on ancient English laws setting the age squire. Okay, I'm still not... That's still wrong. Are we seeing a pattern here? I'll continue here. Parental kidnapping in America, he says. A historical and cultural analysis by Maureen... I'm going to butcher this. Dabog page 128. Maureen Dabog is a writer and author. Sorry if I butchered that name. Born in Michigan, she serves as a Virginia Supreme Court family mediator. She echoes the same statements as previous authors. The 19th century, the minimum age of consent for sexual intercourse in most American states was 10 years. In Delaware, it was only 7 years. Okay, continuing on. That's wrong. That's what I have to say about that. The American Bar Association Journal, he says, 1275 English common law criminalizes statutory rape, sex between a man and a woman below the age of consent, which was first set at 12 years. 1576 common law age of consent lowered to 10 years. 1700s to 1800s statutory rape at common law adopted in the United States. States set the age of consent at 10 or 12 years. So, you guessed it. Still immoral. I don't care. Those people were wrong. Were they my ancestors? I mean, my ancestors weren't making the laws, so I guess. And you know what? They were wrong. Moving on. So I said a lot here, and this is going to kind of repeat some of the things I said, but I want to read it all out. People are quick to claim any criticism of Islam as being Islamophobic or hate speech. It's not. It's using the actual teachings of the most popular denomination of Islam to criticize the religion itself. The Prophet engaged me when I was a girl of 6 years, and this is a quote from Aisha. The Prophet engaged me when I was a girl of 6 years, when we went to Medina and stayed at home of Bani al-Harith bin Khazraj, excuse me. I don't speak that language, so I apologize. I tried my best. Then I got ill and hair fell down. Later on, my hair grew again, and my mother, Rahman, came to me while I was playing in a swing with some of my girlfriends. She called me, and I went to her not knowing what she wanted to do to me. She caught me by the hand and made me stand at the door of the house. I was breathless then, and when my breathing became all right, she took some water and rubbed my face and head with it. Then she took me into the house. There in the house I saw some Ansari women who said, "Best wishes and Allah's blessing and good luck." Then she entrusted me to them, and they prepared me for the marriage. Unexpectedly, Allah's apostle came to me in the forenoon, and my mother handed me over to him. And at that time I was a girl of 9 years of age. Muhammad, a grown man. That was end quote. And that is from Volume 5, Sahih al-Bukhari, Volume 5, Book 58, number 234. Muhammad, a grown man, went after a girl of 6 and married her at 9. Maybe, just maybe, if he met Allah and was shown the essence of objective morality, he wouldn't be having sex with little girls. You know, something a small child realizes is wrong from an early age these days. Just maybe. In order for it to be phobic in any way, and I said this because, you know, he's trying to claim that I'm, you know, there's some hate speech there, that I'm like hating, you know, that this is all hate speech, and I obviously strongly dislike and hate, you know, Allah, and that's why I just can't come to terms with what he wrote down in the Quran. It's a deep-seated conspiracy, thousands of years old, and I just have to cling on to it. This is what this guy believes. But I say, in order for it to be phobic in any way, it would have to come from a place of irrational fear, which this does not. This is an objective fact from the religion's own teachings. After all, I criticize Christianity and Christian leaders all the time, and nobody says I'm racist or bigoted. Some have criticized those who criticize Islam, Ben Affleck, because of the current political climate, caused by the hateful and xenophobic rhetoric Donald Trump and the alt-right engages in. This is not based on an irrational fear of Islam. It's based on an irrational fear of people who aren't white. A revolting amalgamation of racism and xenophobia. And that makes this completely different from alt-righters. I mean, people on the alt-right also poop, I would guess, on a regular basis. Just because you might share some commonalities with someone does not mean you endorse or support their rhetoric. This is a criticism of an idea, not of people. Faisal al-Mutar drives home the entire point I'm making. He says, we should all be free to criticize ideas. No idea, belief, or ideology is above criticism. Only when you drift into attacking people, like Mike Pence did when he falsely claimed that there were Middle Easterners in the migrant caravan, does it move from criticism of an ideology into hate speech. That makes an enormous difference and is what sets those who criticize Islam for factual and historical and philosophical, I should have added in there, reasons apart from those who are simply xenophobic bigots. Your feelings should not be damaged by someone criticizing a belief you have. The only reason this would happen is if your beliefs are rooted in feelings rather than objective facts. I'm not saying that you can't feel passionately about issues. Someone criticizing a belief you hold isn't a personal attack on you. It's an attack on an idea. The only logical reason to be offended by someone criticizing an idea is an idea you have is if your ideas are rooted in feelings. So one more time I'll say it. Objectively, the Prophet Muhammad was a pedophile. There's not a thing that you can do about it. And then I replied again, because he had posted all of those other citations there. I said, on your citations of legal age in the U.S., it's wrong, and always has been wrong, to have sex with children. I don't have to defend archaic, immoral American laws that I disagree with. My father was a pedophile. He raped my mother and her sister when they were children. You know, like Muhammad did. He went to prison, just like he should have. And he says, do you really think I care about your opinion now? No one criticized the prophet from the time he married, nor the prophets in the Bible and the marriage of Mary. Even America, it was legal. The prophet, if he was a warlord, he was able to do what he want, not marrying the daughter of his best friend Abu Bakr. And the hadith is 200 years after the death of the prophet and his wife. Many Muslims hate her because they believe she was the reason of not allowing Ali to rule after the prophet. And then he says the interview is over. Now I'd like to invite you to shut the F up. Thank you. So obviously he's triggered. And this is what usually happens. Like, they try to throw these ad hominem attacks at you, and then when it doesn't work, then they start essentially shutting down the conversation, because they really just have no foothold to stand on. Like, all of these arguments are just really on their face, just complete bullcrap. You know, it's not amounting to really anything. But I replied back and said, I've already been down the same road with hundreds of Christians and hundreds of Muslims. You're using the same bad arguments they are. You are the one that has to bend into a pretzel to defend your ideology, not me. I don't believe in the teachings of a prophet that did immoral things more than a millennia ago. You do. I follow an objective morality that is based on empathy, philosophy, and compassion, that is leaps and bounds better than any supposed deity has come up with from antiquity. Believe in whatever the heck you want. I don't really care, but I will reject proselytizing in any public forum I'm a part of. I will not be responding further. Thanks for the extra ammo for my debunking video. And then I'm going to give him, even though he went into a rage there, he went meme happy, I'm going to read it all out, because that's what discussions are about. So then he says, no, they weren't the same. The prophet didn't rape a child. She reached puberty, and her father was his companion, and no one took him to jail nor criticized him for 1,300 years. Yeah, once again, just because it's legal or illegal doesn't mean it's moral. And we're talking about morality. Today, we know that having sex with 7-year-old or 9-year-old girls as a man who's well into his 30s is wrong. And I'm just saying that if it's wrong now, then it was also wrong then. And he claims to be the arbiter, or at least have met the arbiter of truth and morality. So I'm just saying that not only is Allah a pedophile, but Muhammad is a pedophile, because he seemed to think that having sex with a 9-year-old girl was moral. So I'm just saying this stems way beyond Muhammad. Way beyond Muhammad. And that might sound really offensive to you, but I'm just saying this is logic. You have to be critical of every idea out there, including ones that you hold close. So continuing on. He says, and by the way, her age is not 9 for sure. This hadith is 200 years old after the death of Prophet, and there is a study that suggests this hadith was made up because the enemies of Aisha accused her for she was engaged to Jubair bin Mutem for 2 years, and her father broke that engagement because Jubair didn't accept Islam. That sounds like a decent fellow there. Kala bint Hakam proposed Aisha, and the Prophet accepted to honor her father, his companion. Sorry, it's kind of hard to move through this. But anyway, Muslims respect the law that you cannot marry a girl before she has reached puberty. No need for finishing high school back then, however. I don't believe her age, because there are other hadith, her age and her sister suggested that her age was older than 15 and even 17. You didn't believe in God nor the Quran. You're only one hadith believer, not even believing in the other hadith, by the way. Hadith equals saying. If you're not an atheist anymore, you are, and this is another tactic that they like to do. It's like they're essentially just want to find some way to say that you believe in something because you reject that there is a God or gods. So it's a little weird to say that I believe in a book. I mean, I just read the book, dude. Am I not supposed to look at that information and then come to a conclusion? And then if I have questions, go out and look up information like, I don't know, other studies who say the exact opposite of what you're saying? Yeah. So, I mean, it's not like I'm going over and believing on faith or something like that, right? Like you do. I'm not believing on something without evidence. I'm looking at the evidence and then forming a belief. And I'm just saying that it's kind of a split-sided deal there. It's not so exact and define or certain what you're saying. So, I mean, I'm just saying I don't have any reason to make up random things to just down on Islam. There's plenty of things that I can continue on to down on Islam. And I'm not trying to go out of my way to dishonestly down a religion. Because if you dishonestly down a religion, then you aren't engaging in a conversation that might make somebody pull out of that particular belief. So I'm just saying, like, it's not in my best interest to lie about this. I want to tell the truth about this, and that's why some of the things that you are hearing from me sound offensive, is because people in your circles probably don't tell you the truth. They continue on puppeting or parroting all of these little things that they've heard in all of these little... I've been in there. I have seen these forums. I have seen these Facebook groups. I've been in there as a person looking at the conversations. I've been a member in those groups. So I'm just saying, I know these groups exist. I know how apologists get their information. I know a good chunk of the apologist's information when it comes to proselytizing. So going over and making this little ad hominem attack saying, oh, you didn't understand it. Yes, I did. I understand it just fine. So then he continues on. And he says, anyway, tell me how you as an atheist, do you care about baby girls, but support abortion? Oh, so here's the abortion argument. I've already done videos on that. That's a tired one. But, and why did you criticize your father? Wasn't he an atheist too? No, I didn't know my father. I'm adopted. Who think you are no different than animals? I mean, we are animals. We're just, the leader of the animals, like the best animals on this planet currently. What makes you special? Nothing. I'm not that special. I suggest you call yourself Jason the One Hadith Believer. And like I said, that's once again him trying to project, because he knows, he has to know in his mind that all of these arguments are just complete and utter bullcrap. Like they don't hold water. They just don't. So then he sent a flurry of memes. The first one is the meme where it's like the two buttons, the button press. Believe in only one hadith 200 years old, while there are other hadiths contradicting. Or believe in God. False dichotomy much? Continue on. You are not an atheist anymore. You are a one hadith believer. And then the Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he's pointing he's sitting in a chair and pointing. When you see one hadith believer. And then another one, existence of God, Quran and the Bible. And then only 200 years old hadith. So, yeah. This has been a journey. But the main thing that I'll say is that when it comes to people trying to give good, logical reasons, and I'm kind of almost like what they believe is good. Like in a lot of cases when it comes, and I would say in every single case that I've ever heard, after doing countless hours and hours of research and reading, watching various professional apologists even, William Lane Craig, professional guys. There's not really any great arguments. They all stem from a fallacious foundation. And this guy was no different, but it was engaging in, I live for that. I think it's good that people engage in all kinds of different types of debate. I think that it's something that our country needs more of, but I think that people need to kind of also learn some philosophy, even just basic stuff. I mean, there was, just trying to think here, there was argument from ignorance. There was, correlation does not equal causation. Multiple times, in fact, on that one. And then, ad hominem attacks. And then bandwagon fallacy. There's just fallacy after fallacy in there. And all I'm doing is just mentioning back that they're fallacies, they don't work, and he takes severe offense and is obviously triggered. So I'm just saying that engaging with people like this can be sometimes productive, but you have to have the mindset that you're not going to change that particular person's mind. That's not the goal of the discussion. The main goal of the discussion is that that other person understands your point. You know, you're trying to make a point and you're trying to be understood. But at the same time, the main goal is just to rebut the arguments, and that's it. If they say something true, agree with it. You know, I think that, like he said there, you know, there's a number of good things that are in holy texts, and I think he would agree with that. Just like I would also, if he even said that, I would agree with it. But that doesn't mean that they're the truth. That those things really happened in history. Or that a God is real. And that's the whole point. But I'm going to go ahead and do that debunk video in a separate episode. If this is something you like, please hit that like, subscribe button, and I will catch you on the next one.